we're now going to be looking at the topic of memory, and we're going to start off looking at short-term and long-term memory. The things that we're going to be looking at in this PowerPoint are the capacity of both short-term memory and long-term memory, the duration of short-term and long-term memory, and how we code in short-term memory and long-term memory. Now, capacity for our long-term memory seems limitless. It seems that we can remember lots of detail about things. However, short-term memory is a bit more capped on its ability. Now, it was assessed, or is assessed in psychology, using digital span. And Jacobs' very old study, 1887, assessed short-term memory and found that the average span for digits, how many numbers we can remember, is roughly about 9.3 items and 7.3 if we're trying to remember letters. Miller confirmed this limited capacity of short-term memory in 1956, and he concluded that the span of immediate memory is about 7 items, give or take 1 and 2 dependent on the individual, time of day, etc. The second thing we need to understand about memory and memory research is coding. So information that we store has to be written in memory format, so it has to be converted from one form to another, from short-term memory through rehearsal to long-term memory, for example, and this is called coding. Baddeley in 1966 tested coding for semantics, that's meaning, and acoustic, that's sound, memory. The participants either had acoustically similar words, such as cat, cab, can, cap, or semantically similar words meaning the same thing, great, large, big, huge, and so on. It was found that participants had difficulty remembering acoustically similar words in short-term memory, but not in long-term memory. Whereas in semantic words posed little problem in short-term memory, they were easier for us to remember, but were muddled when it came to long-term memory recall. The conclusion from this research, therefore, is that short-term memory is largely encoded acoustically, whereas long-term memory needs semantics, needs meaning to be coded into our memory. Okay, so duration of our memory. How long does our memory last? Well, long-term memory has the potential to last forever, but short-term memory, unless it's rehearsed, repeated over and over again, only has a short duration. Peterson in 1959 tested, using lab experiment, 24 undergraduate students, each taking part in 8 trials. That's 8 goes through conditions. On each trial, a student was given a trigram, such as YMC, and a 3-digit number to remember. So they were asked to recall the trigram after retention intervals, and this basically means that they were shown the 3-digit letters, and they were then asked with a distraction tax in the middle, which was to count backwards the 3-digit from their 3-digit number. And they had to do this for 3 seconds and then recall the trigram, or for 6 seconds count backwards, then recall the trigram, and then go to the other end, 15 seconds counting backwards, and then remember the trigram. So what they were testing was how long the trigram was held in the short-term memory without rehearsal. So after 3 seconds, participants were 90% correct. After 20% after 9 seconds, and only 2% after 18 seconds. So this suggests that short-term memory has a duration maximum of 18 seconds or less when rehearsal is prevented. Now, Barak in 1975 did a far more externally valid piece of research, something that is actually practical and we probably would do in our everyday lives. And he tested long-term memory using 400 participants, so a really nice representative sample. And he was testing their memory of classmates before 15 years after graduation and then after 48 years of graduation. Now, in one condition, they were shown photographs from class yearbooks and asked to list the names of the old school friends, or they were simply asked to recall as many names as they could from their graduation class. The results, when you're given the photos, within 15 years, 90% could recall the names, and after 48 years, 70% recall. Now, when you're just doing free recall, so you've got no photos in front of you, within 15 years, only 60% of the names were recalled, and after 48, it was 30%. So this shows that our memory deteriorates if we're given no prompt. But this is a nice experiment because it is something that we would actually use in everyday life.